Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Consulting with Authority. This is your host, Scott Cantrell, joined by another wonderful colleague that I've had the privilege and pleasure of meeting and talking to a couple of times. We met through a virtual online networking event. Go figure, in today's world, that's how it happens. But I'm really excited to introduce you to Nancy Giere. Nancy works with organizations and consultants to help them develop virtual learning systems that can be used for building out prospecting, can be used to create more customer and client loyalty, and to generate new sources of revenue. So I know that for you all as professional experts, thought leaders, authors, speakers, consultants, coaches, if you haven't already developed your online presence and have something scalable and leverageable that you can sell over and over and over again to further establish your brand, your expertise, your authority, and generate some additional revenue, or even if you already have something and you want to do something else or enhance what you already have, this is going to be a tremendously valuable session for you. Nancy, thank you so much for carving out some time and being with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm really glad to be here today.
Excellent. So let's start at the beginning. And you don't have to, tell us the whole story, right? But maybe give us the snapshot on how you got to being this online course expert and creator that you are today.
Well, I've worked in training and development most of my professional career, and I've been working on online courses before people even really knew that they were cool. This goes back a long time ago, gosh, back to the late 90s, when everything was done using, there were these things called CDs. There were even,
I've heard of those.
3 1/4 discs. Or 3, anyway, but kind of going all the way back where it was really, you think about it from an angle of, we've always had but courses that have been self-study, and the self-study formats have evolved as technology has evolved. Sure. And so I've gone from somebody who's written a lot of workbooks to now creating online courses that, they're all done virtually on the web.
Yeah, that's great. And tell us a little bit about, you said you had your background in training and development.
Yes.
Tell us a little about the work that you do today in terms of your own consulting work, the types of organizations or individuals or companies that you work with, and really the work that you do with them in terms of helping them create or launch an online program.
Okay. Well, there's 2 distinct groups that I work with. One is I do work for larger corporations, and that's where they'll bring me in and I'll help them build out a program that's all about their content. And it's usually for either employee or customer training. So that's one part of my consulting work. The other part of my work is working with entrepreneurs. So could be authors, speakers, coaches, consultants, really people that are in the thought leadership space. And they've got, great ideas, fantastic expertise, and they want to be able to turn it into some type of an online offering, whether it's a self-study program that somebody consumes independently, or perhaps it's a series of Zoom programs, so in a live online format, or looking at how do I take those types of components and build them into my consulting practice as part of a full-on offering, so they can have clients that they can work with that want to be the sort of the do-it-yourselfer, all the way up to the high ticket types of offers, where you want to have just lots of different options to work with them on and move them forward.
Understood. So I want to kind of take a second in both those groups, and obviously we'll spend more time on that second one, the entrepreneurial group, since that's who we're speaking to today.
Right.
But what's interesting to me, something that you and I haven't directly talked about, but what's occurring to me, which you no doubt well know, is that me being a consultant, or the consultants we have listening or watching this podcast, we work with organizations or corporations all the time.
Right.
A huge piece of the puzzle they're often missing is employee or client training, or maybe the direct intervention or engagement that we have with one of our organizational or business clients might be around client service or client training or employee training. It seems like partnering with someone like you and making that a profit center, right, where we're the experts and we come in and we're designing the content and the material. but we may not have the expertise or care to learn this brand new, very difficult, complex skill in terms of an online program, but we can still bring that to our clients in the form of someone like you. I assume you probably have partnerships like that where you've worked through other consultants. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
And value that a consultant could bring to an organization to create more impact and income.
Well, what I want to start with is I've sat on both sides of the table.
Okay.
I've been the training director, the one who's been out trying to source programs to bring into a company. And then I've also been the consultant bringing content into an organization.
Sure.
And there's a huge opportunity if you have a particular expertise and you can match that expertise with what a corporation needs to bring your program in. And working on 2 projects now where there are licensing opportunities. So, because if what I've kind of come to is, if it's the organization's content, they're going to build it themselves, or they're going to hire an instructional designer to help them build it.
Right.
But oftentimes they get requests for content, like certainly right now, D&I is huge, right? People are looking for those types of programs. Right. They're not necessarily going to build that internally because there's lots of experts that have that particular type of a program built.
Right.
So they're more likely to buy that, and maybe they'll white label it in some way. They'll bring it in. It'll sit on their learning management system, but they're going to essentially have the rights for a particular program that they can use with their people.
Fascinating.
That's where the opportunity is. Look at sales, negotiation, communication. These are topics that it doesn't make sense for a company to build it themselves when they can buy it. And then you can really leverage it by customizing it, by saying, okay, how do we take this content? Like if you look sales, for example, sales is sales is sales is sales.
Yeah, right.
But what is the selling situation in your client's company? And how do you take your expertise in that topic and personalize it to them?
Understood.
What are their stories? What are their examples? What are their specific challenges? That's where I think there's a huge opportunity.
No question. And that's, I hadn't even thought about kind of diving into this aspect and opportunity in terms of this interview, but I'm fascinated now because I'm thinking about my own expertise and how I have a sales program called Stealth Selling, for instance.
Right.
That is designed, it's a consultative sales process. And I can imagine, a half dozen industries and potential organizations that could really benefit from it. So now I'm intrigued with this idea and the fact that you're helping a consultant like me shortcut that process and connect those dots. Mm-hmm. So the way that would work then, and I'm just kind of articulating process, and then you can correct what I'm saying if I'm off base. But someone like me would work with you. We would design the Stealth Selling program, this online training program. And then presumably, I would assume because of your background and your expertise, you could help me identify some potential organizations and prospects to potentially go out and have that conversation, not in terms of you prospecting them, but helping identify the types of organizations that might be willing to license that type of program.
Yeah, to look at what's out there in the market and where would the need be.
Okay.
And there's two paths in. Oftentimes it's you can come in through, vice president of sales, because there's always budget in sales.
Right.
In any part of a company. Yeah. But there's also building relationships with the people that are running the learning and development departments, because oftentimes somebody in a part of the company will come to them and say, I need a course about. And then they look at it and go, is this something we should build? Or is this something that we can go out in the market and buy? So if they're coming up with like a new process, they're probably going to build that.
Right. Because it's internal. It's
internal. It's And there's where they will ask for help is somebody to help them to build it. And so that's somebody like me that my background is in instructional design and curriculum development. I can go in and I can help them build it.
This is where someone like me would have a client, an organization client, and they have a need, like I'm in the business development space. They have a need to refine a marketing process, and they need to make sure that there is proper teaching and training on how to leverage that new process. I bring you in and we work together to build that program.
Right.
For them. Yeah.
And it's important to look at, well, what works in an online format and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because there's certain times that people have to practice a skill. You can't, if you just watch, let's say the presentation skills, for example, I can watch the videos and go, okay, I get this. I can write a speech, go, okay, my speech is written. But eventually I actually have to perform it.
Yep.
And someone has to give me feedback.
Right.
Now, you can certainly do things like you can perform it, you can submit a video and somebody could critique it. But there's how do you show up if you're in front of a live audience as opposed to if you're just doing a recording? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think we show up differently when we're looking at an audience or we're looking at ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We're horrified. My hair today, what happened? So
no, that makes perfect sense.
I worked on a curriculum. It was for welding for a lot. Eventually they got to pick up the torch.
No, that's right.
Right.
Yeah. There's a practical skill set that has to be practiced before. Yeah.
You're not just going to have them do the online learning and go, all right, go weld that thing.
here's a very hot torch. Now go set things on fire, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And I'm glad we went down that path, because it makes perfect sense to hear you talk about those types of opportunities, but I certainly hadn't really considered it for myself. And I suspect that's probably the case for a lot of consultants in terms of a license. A consultant who hasn't really dived into this possibility of licensing their content, it seems like it's far away. Mm-hmm. And it's something that, that's for other consultants that have 30 years of experience and, have New York Times bestselling books. But from what I'm hearing you say is if it's scratching an itch, and you're in front of the right people, then they're looking for these types of answers, and it's faster, cheaper, easier for them to simply invest in a solution that's already created as opposed to building it themselves.
Right. And the one element to be mindful of is, what does that company's learning management system look like? And what types of file formats will they accept? So you kind of want to know, where is this going to land? Because if you think about it, when employees are going through their training, mm-hmm. there's two different ways that it happens. One is everybody gets a stipend and they can spend it on whatever throughout the year. So they're going to go externally to do that. They're going to maybe go out to somebody's Thinkific or Teachable, pick your platform site, and they'll consume a course there. They'll go to a conference.
Right.
But the other side of it is when a company makes an investment and says, everybody's going to go through this program, or this is the curriculum for the different jobs.
Yep.
Those courses will reside internally on their learning management system. Gotcha. So early in the game, you want to find out about how is that going to happen, so that you design the program in a way that it'll work on their site early in the game, rather than later in the game.
Yeah, as opposed to having to rebuild it on a different platform that will integrate with what they already have.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that is a consideration that obviously I would not have had. So thank you.
But these are, and that's really when you're thinking about going into a corporation, you gotta figure out, well, they're not going to bend to you, right?
Of course, right.
You need to figure out how to make what you have work in their environment.
Yes,
and it was, when we were doing stuff in person, you just showed up and talked.
Right.
And you had your handouts,
and maybe they recorded it and made that available later. But yeah. Yes, no, you're absolutely right. In today's world, the easier you can make it for them to not only buy, but the easier you can make it for them to roll out and implement, the more valuable your offering is.
And to step back and look at the live online type of an environment, there are many corporations that they're going to want you to deliver on Teams. They don't, Zoom we're all into Zoom, and Zoom is like part of everybody's lives. Some companies use Zoom, and some, they're Microsoft shops.
Yep.
And they're going to use the Microsoft suite of products. And so you need to then understand, well, if I want to deliver on Teams, what does that mean? How am I going to do that? What can it do for me? What doesn't it do? Yeah. And then, there's always the opportunity to bring in some third-party apps when you're doing the live online type of work, things like Mentimeter, for example, or Kahoot. They're great ways of creating more engagement through quizzes and the way you can visually do polling and get information. But some companies are going to say, that's great, but with our security, not going to happen.
It's a no-go. Right. Yeah.
So there's sometimes you can have all these great, so you really have to know what's
what
acceptable.
The environment's going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Your program has to fit within your environment. Okay.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And the more you know, like if you're building it for the first time for someone, the more you know about what the requirements are, the less rework you're going to have.
Understood. Yeah. So thinking through that for a second, just taking it one step further, if an individual has an intent of potentially, or they want to go out and license some of their content to larger organizations, the selling program to VP of sales in this organization or that, I could still go ahead and create I could still go ahead and record the video training, right? The content part of it, just understanding that, yes, that content lives somewhere online, Vimeo or wherever it's hosted. And then when I close the licensing sale, building it out for them on their LMS or in an environment that is going to be acceptable and useful to them, as opposed to having the content, going ahead and spending all this time, effort, money, building it on a platform that then I take to market and they can't use. Right. Yeah. So it make sure that it's the chicken and the egg thing a little bit, but make sure that you have the answers to that before you invest the time and effort. Okay.
And what we build internally on a platform, the company's called Articulate.
Okay.
And what we use is their Rise product. And what that allows you to do is to create what are called SCORM compliant files. Now, I can't remember exactly what SCORM stands for, but think of it, it's like
already over my head. So.
I know it's just what it does is it puts them into a format that will be acceptable on any company's learning management system.
Okay, cool.
You can also, if you have your own learning management system, so I happen to be on the New Zenler platform now. A lot of people are on, Kajabi seems to be the name that always comes up, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of really great platforms out there. And you want to look for something that if it will accept a SCORM compliant file, you can build in Rise, which is what we're doing with our clients that are selling to corporations. We're building it in Rise because then they can take those files and they can sit on the company's LMS and on their LMS, which at the end of the day, that's a huge time saver.
Of course it is. Yeah.
Right. So your only really change between the two programs is, so for your own personal one, you're going to have a set of examples and stories that you're going to use there.
Sure.
When you go to sell it to a company, you're going to swap out your stories and examples with their stories and examples.
That makes sense.
So the lift to change isn't as significant as if you build something out using the features and functionality of your platform and then go, oh, well, now I got to redo the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that makes perfect sense.
And we've got one program in flight right now that we're doing that for, that I think is going to be really cool.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that's exactly why someone would work with someone like you, right? It's because you have that program, you know how to use it. You've already thought through all those questions that we don't even know to ask. So that's fantastic. Let's jump to the other side now. So we've talked about corporate groups and licensing, which is, a path I didn't know we were going to go down, but I think fantastic that we did.
You never know when it's live, right?
Well, that's right. I love it. Let's talk about the entrepreneurial side, right? So this is aimed at, still aimed for consultants. In this case, the buyers would be the consultants, presumably prospects and clients and so forth. But it's not a licensed program that lives within an organization. It is sold in mass, so to speak, by a consultant like me or by a thought leader or an expert. Tell me a little about that process when you're talking with someone who is a consultant in a space and they want to create their own online course. For the most part, I'm going to assume that one of their primary objectives is what we talked about before, expanding their capacity for revenue generation, while at the same time still delivering meaningful value out in the marketplace. What's sort of your process for when you start talking to a consultant and kind of moving them through that process to having that online course created?
Right. Well, it all starts out with what's their expertise?
Sure.
And who do they serve? And how is it that they help them? So is there a particular process that they go through? And to really kind of look at, okay, what's your end-to-end process? How are you working with people? And then to step back and do some very limited client research to find out, well, what would they like to learn from you? Kind of, you know what their pain points are, you know what their challenges are, you know what their goals and aspirations are. Well, then how does that connect into your expertise? And what can you do to move them forward? So I always like to start out kind of doing a high level scope with people to really get a sense of, what they're all about. And then from there, I can work in a couple of ways. One is the done for you. Well, I'll do all the heavy lifting. And the other is a done with you, which is really, really a coaching model. And what I find is during the first stage where we're doing some discovery, we're scoping the project, doing discovery and getting to the point of coming up with how are we going to design that? That's really a lot of done with you type of work to get to a design. And when I talk about a design, that's a blueprint that you can take that document and you then can execute the course creation from there. And everybody I work with, once we get to that point, has different skill sets. So I'm working with one client now, and she's very capable of being on camera, doing all the filming. She's got some interns that she's hired, and they can do editing, they can do animation, they can. Cool. So she's got people on her team. They can from that design, they can take it and carry it forward.
Right.
And the role that I will play will be to just look at what they're doing along the way and give them some coaching and guidance about how to make it better.
Sure.
Other people, you get to that point and they go, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, right. I got
camera,
I love the
PowerPoint
design,
slides, keynote slides, Zoom, they're depending at so what at that point, it's kind of like meeting them where they are and saying, what kind of help do you need moving forward? They may go, we got this. We want to just check in once a month. We want to just hold us accountable and keep us going. Other people are like, can you build it for me?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And everything in between. Or there may be parts of it that they're comfortable with, like, hey, I'm great making my own slides, but I'm nervous about being on camera and I don't think my lighting is right. So, it's really, everybody is different.
Sure.
And what I'm seeing in the market is people are trying to turn this into a cookie cutter kind of a business, and it's not.
Gotcha.
Because everybody comes to it with a different set of skills that they can move forward. And it all comes down to what is the best use of time.
Yeah. For them. Right.
For them. Right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I can help them really, whether they just want to be coached through the process or they're like, can you build this for me? Can you make the slides for me? Or can you just come up with a template that I can work in?
Sure.
Whatever it might be. And then the other part of it is I also look at things that people are already built. Mm-hmm. Because let's face it, in 2019, 2020, everybody with a computer
building a course
was building a course, which is a good thing.
We're trying to.
We're trying to. It's a good thing and a bad thing because
right.
There's some great courses out there, but there's a lot of stuff that's frankly, I'm going to be kind here, mediocre.
Yeah.
And it doesn't showcase that person's brilliance to the level that it should.
Yeah.
So I also work and say, what can we do to level up? And sometimes it's not that big of a difference. It's thinking through, coming up with a plan before you say, go.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And of course, what you were saying in terms of meeting your client where they are, because yes, I have a different skill set than a consultant, another consultant would. I'm thinking of a very tech savvy friend of mine who on the tech side, he would be aces, but he would he would not want to fiddle or play around with PowerPoint or slides or content development at all. So in his case, it might be the opposite of what it might be for someone like me. I love working on content, developing content, but on the technical side of it, I'm less than a novice at best. So would need that support and help.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
I think there's also a challenge around, you see ads all the time for the different platforms. Have your course up in a half an hour. Have your course up, right? And you can do that if you've already written it and done all the video recording. It's like, because they're not lying. Yeah, you can have it up in a half an hour.
Right.
If you have it all the components ready to go.
Precisely.
So it's almost, I think people are buying into these subscriptions, and it's like getting a gym membership in January. You know, the first week you're there, you're poking around, this is great. And then
then I actually have to do work.
Never heard from again. Something. Oh, I actually have to get on the rowing machine right. and do the reps. Oh, well.
No, it's very
Where's the
true.
snack bar?
It's very true. It is very true. And you mentioned a couple of some of the more prominent platforms, you know, Kajabi being one. I have a lot of colleagues who I know are using Kajabi.
Yes.
ClickFunnels, not so much for course building, although they, you know, loosely have a course building component. It's really more of a marketing platform and lead page builder than anything. And then, of course, you mentioned it was Zenler.
New Zenler is another platform. And Kartra, and those three, right. What they share in common is they have the marketing and the course builders components together. So they're all in one solutions.
Gotcha.
And there's other platforms that they're either like ClickFunnels, like designed primarily for the marketing, and then there's other ones that are
little piece. Yeah.
And there's other ones like Thinkific and Teachable,
right? And
they're great they've got the whole course building part and the implementation for that. But you have to integrate with another platform to do your marketing as of this recording. Now, these things change all the time, right?
Yeah.
But that seems to be the key distinctions. And they all do a great job. It's just a question of, you know, when you go in and you look at them, what is it about it that resonates with you? You want to look at it and say, do I like the aesthetics of it? What features does it have
that are critical for me?
Right. And then, decide from there. I landed on the platform that I'm on. It came recommended to me by my coach he's still my coach. And she said, and by the way, I've got people that can do all of the heavy lifting for you to put your content on here. And I was like, done.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, great. I'm just going to go forward.
Sure.
Just do, because I was on a very tight timeline for getting some things up and running,
which helped.
And I just was like, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And, I keep looking around at what's out there, and
sure.
I might change at some point, but for now it's all good.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And, I've, from my own experience with different software and technology, this is coming from someone who is not tech savvy at all. But what I've found is, you want to do some due diligence and research on the different platforms, identify the top 3 or 4 that seem to be the most utilized, compare and contrast in terms of obviously cost and feature sets and aesthetic and those types of things you mentioned. But at the end of the day, it's for me, I think of it kind of like choosing a CRM. Like you said, any of them will work. You simply have to pick the horse and ride it.
Exactly.
They'll all finish the race.
Yeah.
They'll all do the work you need them to do. It's just you should choose the one you will use.
Yes.
And that's the tricky part, I think, is getting to the gym to continue the metaphor, like you said.
Actually do it, right?
Actually doing it. Yeah.
And it's sort of as your team evolves, you may bring in a new person to your team, and they might say, hey, you know what, I've been using this other platform for a long time, and I really like it because if it can do these things for you and, maybe save you money or whatever it is, would you be interested in making a change? And if I've got, maybe.
Gotcha. So I want to look at this from a slightly different angle, although I think we may have talked about this, at least implicitly. I want to talk about the reasons why, and I think a lot of the consultants listening will know, but the reasons why an online course can be so valuable for a consultant. Maybe you can speak to that in terms of the client work that you've done and some of the examples, success stories that you've seen in terms of where a consultant was and how an online course helped them do X, Y, or Z. What do you see as the major benefit or outcomes or advantages of having this in the arsenal or in the inventory?
Well, the first one is courses can be great lead magnets. Doing some mini courses that perhaps you put into some form of a drip marketing campaign, and you're providing people with value along the way. So they don't see you as just somebody who's sending them an email to sell them something, but you're distributing content that's like, that helps. I was working with a boutique accounting firm, and they specialized in health and wellness. So they put together some programs about, how to run a health and wellness business.
Sure.
So then people are like, when I'm ready to do my books, I'm going to go to you because you help me. So looking at it as a lead magnet where you're giving information, because think about it, where people are like, oh, but I don't want to give away my best stuff. But I think that there's something psychologically that goes on that says, boy, if I got that for free,
imagine
if I paid them,
yes,
what I might get.
No, it's 100% right. That's my experience as well.
Exactly. So that's the lead magnet idea. Then
quick, would you have a recommendation? I know there's probably no hard or fast rules, but a rule of thumb, because a mini course has been kind of in the back of my mind for some of the work that I do too, and I haven't pulled the trigger on it. What would you say in terms of length? Is there a target range? Is it a week long in terms of doled out emails and access to different? Is it a month? What's your perception of that?
There's all different kinds of ways that you can do it, and one thing that can be really effective is to do something over a month long period and have things that go out that are in the 5-minute range, really short. Now, short. See, I think it's funny because short is now 60 seconds in some people's mind.
It changed. Right.
You have to look at it like keep it like. Could be 3 minutes, could be 5 minutes, could be 7 minutes. What is the content dictate? If you want to do it as efficiently and as quickly as you can.
Right.
And
it is what it is at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. And taking that out in that direction.
Okay, good. Thank you for answering that question.
Sure.
Derail you. So the next one you were mentioning.
So let's see. The next thing would be if you're looking at it from, okay, now you've got them and they are your customers. A lot of consultants and coaches, there's an onboarding process, right?
Yeah.
So in the onboarding, what is it that you say over and over and over and over again, right?
Yeah.
And you can look at what could you extract and put into an online course that they could go and they could watch and they could work through it with some assignments. So you kind of look at your onboarding as a way of, this is all this information that I say all the time. So then when you actually work with them one-on-one, you can work with them at a deeper level because they've gotten all the basics squared away.
Yeah. And yes, presumably they will have consumed it, or you can mandate that they consume it. And yes, now when you're actually spending your own one-on-one time, they're a lot further down the field. They have a much deeper understanding than they would otherwise. That saves you as the consultant tremendous amounts of time. And as you were saying, what do you say over and over and over again?
Yeah.
I know exactly what I say.
See, you know what your first course is.
Yeah, there you go.
That's really where it falls into place. Now, the other part is, a lot of us, we're working with people one-on-one, and there's only so much time that we have. Even though I thought I read something that Einstein said that time is this artificial construct. I don't know. It's kind of running my show. But there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much time that you can spend.
Yeah.
So what you want to think about is, well, if I want to scale, then I can put in more online programming. Or maybe if you want to shift into doing more group work, depending on the nature of your business. You look at the repeatable information, the more basic information, and you put that into your online program. So people could be going, and instead of like you're running a session and saying, today we're going to talk about blah, 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 blah.
Right.
That could be the recording. Then people come to your group session and it's more of a Q&A, or it's more of a, okay, what really resonated with you? What's the challenge that you're working on? And we're so used to doing things on screens that it's not as big of a shift now for people to do something in advance.
Well, and you actually anticipated one of my next questions, and that's fantastic. And you've given great examples here in terms of the question I asked before. What have you seen over the last couple of years in terms of, you mentioned everybody, in specifically 2020, 2021, everyone's working on a course. And unfortunately, the quality threshold is perhaps not as high as it needs or should be. And that probably is hurting the market at large. But what it does is those who do have good, solid courses stand out now, and they're even more valuable. What have you seen in terms of the other side of it, not in terms of production, but in terms of consumption from a client or organizational side? Is the appetite and the desire for online training higher? Are people burned out by Zooming too much? What's your perception in terms of kind of the market status right now related to consuming this type of content?
I think the appetite is still there for consuming online content. Mm-hmm. But I think now the market is getting a bit more savvy, and there's people who will fade if the content isn't really good, isn't easy to go through. And you think about this is when you're doing something live, like we're live now, and this is all very conversational.
Right.
And so we're going back and forth, and it's a great kind of an experience. And in terms of people looking at this as a one-off type of recording, people know, hey, this is a podcast, and I'm going to go and watch. And I know that it's going to be conversational. Right. I know how it's all going to operate. Where I think there's a breakdown is if you were to say, I'm going to turn this into an online course. This is an online course about online courses. When people come to consume it, if they think they're going to take an online course, the expectations now are different. People have an expectation that there's going to be a little opening segment, then there perhaps is going to be a video that they're going to watch, and then they're going to have an assignment to do or some questions to answer. So people's mindset is now on, when I take an online course, this is how I think it's going to roll.
I think that's a huge point. And obviously there's clearly tremendous application in the online course world. But I think what you're saying is also completely applicable in all aspects of the work that we do with our clients around managing expectations, around how we engage, how we deliver, how we don't deliver, what we don't want to do as opposed to what we want to do, what we will do as opposed to what we won't do. And obviously an online course is a perfect manifestation of that. What I wrote down just then is, what does the client need? What does the client want? And what does the client expect? And there has to be alignment in the proper way amongst those three things. And they're all three different. They're all three distinct, and we have to be aware of all three of them, especially as it relates to something that someone is investing in. Mm-hmm. And especially when they're not going to have not going to have a high level of handholding, right? We're expecting them to go through this to some level on their own and to click the button and consume the content and ultimately apply it. So I think what you're saying is 100%.
Exactly. Because if you're not there to answer questions, you have to really think through how is it all flowing? And if you give them instructions for an activity, are the instructions clear?
Yeah.
I could write up a set of instructions and you could look at them and you could go, wait, I'm not sure about this point or that point, which comes down to when you're building a course, you want to test all of your instructions. You want to have other people read them and see if they can actually do what you hope they're going to do, because we're experts, right? Because we're experts in what we do. We're going to forget something that a beginner is going to need to know, which, and is this whole little phrase, need to know. The other challenge in what I've seen out there is like, there's this desire, I got to tell you everything that I know. And in a course, you want to focus on what is the need to know information. You can put in other tools around it that are nice to know. So you can think about you're just on the main highway. You're going to get from A to B.
Yep.
That's where you want to go. Other days you might be, I'm going to take the scenic route, but I'm going to maybe take a detour because I want to go and find out a little bit more. I mean, you can give people the opportunity to feel like, hey, on that main road, I'm getting just enough of what I need to move forward. Right. But I have a couple of questions about another topic. So you give them the option to be able to go and seek out that other information. And that's something, there's like this, I got to tell you everything, like, it's my only opportunity. No, you've got lots of opportunity to share what you know.
You're probably going to want to offer them something else that they can choose to invest in if they want. Right. And so if you give them everything in one, then you're done. You're done, right?
What's the upsell?
Right.
Because it could be some people they'll just be happy to do the online course. They're good, but maybe the upsell is some additional coaching or some, whatever you do, you can take them to the next level. And it all comes down to the more of your time, our time that they have, the more value and the more you can charge.
Yeah. Well, and so that's a perfect segue. I know we're coming up on time and there's a couple of places I want to go, but one last sort of process or operational question. And just from your own experience and insight, I know there's quote unquote, probably not a right or wrong answer to what I'm going to ask, but I'd love to get your insight on this. And that is around, what do you see as the investment range for a course? Obviously, it's going to depend on the industry, the content that, the results and outcomes that are generated. But what's kind of a rule of thumb for a B2B consultant who is, let's say they're focused on helping that client save money, make money, improve their talent acquisition. It's something, concrete around productivity or profitability. Do you have any guidance or ideas on what that range should be?
This is always the hard question that everybody wants the answer to.
Yeah.
And you hate to say it depends.
Well, but if that's the truth, it's the truth, right?
It's the truth of it. You have to really look at what's the situation, what's the value, what's the potential transformation. It's easily to say that you could plan to do a 2-day workshop. It could be $597, it could be $997. It could be, up to $29.97. It kind of, it really is, what is the type of content? What is the change you're going to bring about? And what's the intention behind it? A lot of people are offering lower priced workshops as a way to take people to that high ticket item.
Right.
So, there's the low entry things that are like that, the $47.97, $197 range. There's the mid-range work, which seems to be in the $2,000 to $5,000 range. And then there's, things that are above that. And it's a bit hard to really be definitive because it depends on the market and it depends on the content and it depends on the outcome that you're going to bring. What's the ROI that you can demonstrate based on the program? Well, and then you can work from there.
I think you've hit the nail on the head too, right? What's the ROI that you can confidently either guarantee or project? And ultimately, the prospect has to believe that, right?
Right.
What's the ROI they can conservatively project? And I wrote down something that I think is really important that you mentioned. You said you used the word potential transformation, and that goes to result and outcome and ROI as well. But if a prospect can believe that a given desired transformation for them, that this program can give them that transformation, and that that's possible. And that it's probable, right? So this is the right information, and it's highly likely that I will achieve that transformation. The bigger the transformation and the higher the likelihood of that transformation, the higher the investment can be.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's really, part of it is your client going to do the work?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. That's, I think, what's tricky for us as consultants in making any type of a guarantee, because we could give them the golden ticket.
Yep.
And they may choose to just put it in a drawer and never look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that happens. Listen, I'm guilty of that too.
Sadly, I know. Yeah,
who
hasn't paid for something that they haven't completely executed on?
Sure.
And so that's part of the, there's, are the people that are consuming it, are they committed and are they ready to really take action?
Yeah.
And not everybody that takes every program is going to be in that place.
Yeah, that's right. 100%. Well, we're coming up on time. I want to make sure I get these last two questions in because they're really important. One is a question I ask every guest, and that is, in terms of your personal and or professional career, do you have any lesson or lessons learned that could be valuable to impart to our listeners and viewers here today that might serve them well?
One, I was thinking about this morning, and as I'm going through it again, is when you're ready to expand your team, whether you're going to bring in contractors or you're thinking about actually hiring employees, you want to do it from a very calm, centered place so that you make the right decision. If you wait until you're stressed and overwhelmed, there's a good chance that you won't make the best decision in terms of who to add to your team, which will then just create more stress and more overwhelm.
And ultimately probably put you back where you were.
And put you back. So to really, and sometimes you have to maybe hit the pause button and let some things kind of, okay, the work will all be here. But right now I got to focus on making this right decision about bringing in the right people to help me.
That's good. That's fantastic. That's great insight. And I know, me being one of them, we're going to have another follow-up conversation. I know it, Nancy. But I know there's probably a lot of listeners and viewers who would love to reach out to you and connect with you, either about their own expertise and turning it into an online course, or maybe they have clients that they work with and they're interested in bringing you in to develop a course for them, or create a licensing program they can take out to market. If someone wants to engage with you or enter into your world, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, there's two ways. One is you can send me an email, and my email is nancy@nancygiere.com. And if you're watching, you can see my first name and last name on the screen. If you're listening, my last name is spelled Giere. And my website is also, oddly enough, nancygiere.com.
Sure.
And you can go there, and I have an opt-in on that page where you'll get my 8 easy steps to create training that sells. And then that will put you into my funnel, and then you'll learn about the different programs that I'm doing. I'll be offering a 5-day challenge the week of March 21st. So I'd love to let people know when that's happening. And I'm running off months. I do some sort of a webinar. Now, as of the recording today, I'm preparing for an event that I'll run again later this year called the 5 steps that the 5 mistakes that course creators make and how to avoid them.
Good.
And that recording could also be available if somebody's interested in that. So I've always got things going on. Excellent. And it's just a question of getting into my universe so I can keep you informed.
That's fantastic. And I am in universe, and like I said,
yes, you are.
We'll continue to be glad to be there. Obviously, we'll also put all of those links and relevant information in our show notes as well. For everybody listening or watching, just go to the show notes, and the relevant links will be there. Nancy provided the direct information too, so you have it that way. Nancy, thank you so much. This has been incredibly content-rich conversation. I've learned a ton. I literally have 4 pages of notes with things starred and arrows drawn. So excited to dive into this further. But again, thank you so much for your time and expertise today.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so glad to have been here. And I love to be of service to people that want to create great courses.
Awesome. And thank you all for joining me today, listening or watching for Consulting with Authority. As always, this is Scott Cantrell, wishing you the best of success. Thank you for listening. I hope you got a ton of value out of this episode. And before we go, I want to thank the sponsor of our show, Smart Solutions Media. Smart Solutions Media empowers business owners, consultants, and other independent professionals to easily attract better prospects and transform them into long-term clients. If you're a B2B consultant or service professional and would like to start filling your pipeline with better quality prospects, visit us on the web at smartsolutionsmedia.com to learn more about what we can do to help you. Be sure to complete the short 2-minute accelerated growth scorecard you can find on the website, and you'll receive a complimentary strategy session where we'll give you specific insights and recommendations to help you attract high-value clients. Until next time, make sure you are consulting with authority.